The following program was produced by the United States Courts.
According to the American Bar Association, women make up a little more than half of all law students in the U.S. But there was a time when female lawyers were rare, and so too were their opportunities. One of these women is Senior Judge Carolyn Dimmick. During her career, she's knocked down a few doors and ascended through a few glass ceilings. Her legacy is that by today's standards, her career path is unremarkable. And according to Judge Dimmick, that's progress. We are happy to bring you her story as we celebrate women's history. Senior Judge Carolyn Dimmick seemed destined for history from the day she was born.
I was born the day of the crash, October 24th, 1929.
The Great Depression was the backdrop for a childhood that was for the most part spent in Seattle, Washington.
My high school was Lincoln High School in Seattle, and for there I went right, the same bus took me to Lincoln High School, to junior high school, and to the University of Washington.
Judge Dimmick's mother was a teacher who had 2 degrees by the time she was 19. She stressed the importance of education to both of her children, but knew from her own experience that Carolyn would face unique challenges as a woman.
Well, my mother, of course, being all into education, having been a teacher, and in those days she could not continue her career because she was a married woman. So she lost her career, so she became a writer.
In 1947, Dimmick enrolled in the University of Washington with plans to study social work. Her curriculum included sociology, economics, and business. It was a business class that would shape the rest of her life.
And I ran into a business law class, and I enjoyed the professor, and I enjoyed the work, the stories, and so I decided to go to law school.
Those stories were cases. Dimmick was fascinated by the subjects, the litigants, and the way the law applied to each of them.
What drew me to it was the little stories, was the little fact patterns in that. Each one was so different, and you just wondered how it was going to end. And it was, and with a lawyer, it would make a big difference how you shaped up the case, that type of thing.
Her academic advisor was less than supportive of her decision to pursue a law degree.
So I went back and I said, what does it take to get into law school? She says, no, I don't encourage that. You're just taking up a place a man needs, and you're probably going to get married, and you won't be working, so it'd be a waste of the university's efforts, he said.
In 1951, Dimmick entered her law program with 5 other women. Classes were very competitive. Many students dropped out, including 2 of the 5 women. Dimmick began having doubts about her future as a lawyer, but then she met other women lawyers, including one who would become her mentor, Betty Howard. One day, Howard took Dimmick to divorce court for an eye-opening experience. She was surprised by the casual attitudes displayed by the male attorneys.
I got out of there, I said, boy, that doesn't look like a courtroom that I've seen in the movies or anywhere. They're not even standing up. She said, see, you could do that. I said, I could do a lot better than that.
After graduation, in 1953, Dimmick landed a job with the Attorney General's office in Olympia, which was just a few hours south of Seattle. The appointment was conditional. She had to pass the bar, which she did. But the announcement, while exciting, was also sexist.
I was water skiing in law school, and I passed the bar exam, which was wonderful. The PI says, blonde water skier passes the bar exam. And it was always like it was one word, And that was always how they referred to me, blonde barrister, this and that. And in the Attorney General's office, it was the same thing. Well, I mean, it's just something for them to say. They don't say it about the men.
Life in the Attorney General's office included answering phones and writing opinions for the various prosecutors in the area. It wasn't glamorous, but the constant research helped her become very familiar with the law and issues in the state of Washington.
And of course, I wanted to excel in my position. There were no other women assistant attorney generals in my office. There was one in another department. And so at every job, seemed to me I worked double time so that I wouldn't be thought of as a slacker or whatever.
Dimmick would later move on to the prosecutor's office. In 1965, she was offered a state district judgeship. She sat on the bench in the Northeast District for 10 years. Then came the appointment to the state Superior Court, and in 1980, Dimmick made history.
Dixie Lee Ray was the governor of the state of Washington, and she decided she was going to put a woman on the Supreme Court because we didn't have one. We had 9 men forever and ever. Called me down, and I went down and talked with her. Then I was appointed. Dixie Lee Ray appointed me to the Supreme Court, and I was the first woman in the state of Washington on that court.
In 1984, Congress approved a new federal judgeship for the Western District of Washington, and once again, Dimmick's name came up. But the prospect of leaving the Washington Supreme Court put Dimmick in an uncomfortable position with her peers.
And then I realized that if I leave the Supreme Court, I'm going to be in deep trouble with the Washington lawyers because there are no women on the court. So I went over and talked to the governor and said, I'm going to have to withdraw.
Fortunately, Governor John Spellman reassured Dimmick that he would replace her with another woman. Dimmick did not withdraw, and after months of vetting, testifying before Congress, and waiting, Carolyn Dimmick finally heard news.
I got a call, and a voice said, the White House calling. President Reagan will be on the line. So he got on the line, and I said, Mr. President, how's the weather in D.C.? And he says, oh, I'm in California. So we had a nice chat. He says, I've done something I think you'll appreciate. He says, I put your name up in this. Senate's agreed that you should have the job. So that was nice. He called personally to tell me of this appointment.
The appointment made U.S. District Judge Carolyn Dimmick the second female federal judge in the Western District of Washington. 13 years later, in 1998, Dimmick took senior status. The lighter caseload allowed her to take on other challenges, like helping to design the new courthouse, which opened in 2004. Looking back on her career, Judge Dimmick does not see herself as a trailblazer or activist. She was simply a woman who wanted to be a lawyer at a time when that happened to be unusual.
I'm sure that I was a forerunner for a lot of women. There weren't the opportunities in the law school. As a graduate, there was nobody in a big firm. Later on, one woman after I was there went to a huge firm. But all the rest of us went to government service or with our lawyer husband, should we have one. And since that time, it's just been so heartening to see how it's developed and how the men are accepting it and the women are accepting it. And it's, you know, you're a lawyer, you're not a woman lawyer like it used to be, a lady lawyer. You're just a lawyer, and that's how it should be, and that's how it's developed, in my opinion.
Senior Judge Carolyn Dimmick no longer hears cases, but she remains an active voice in her courthouse in an administrative role. She also provides oversight in some areas of the clerk's office and court operations. 1981 was a unique year for women practicing law. A few months after Dimmick took her place on the Washington State Supreme Court, President Ronald Reagan nominated the first woman, Sandra Day O'Connor, to the U.S. Supreme Court. Today, there are 3 women on the highest court in the land and more than 300 women serving on the federal bench across the country.